Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Customer Experience Superheroes podcast series. Now, this episode is slightly different to our normal format. Why is that? Well, it's going to be a panel discussion that was conducted at the CX Tech Demo Day, hosted by Lexton earlier in October 2025. Why is this significant? Well, we believe this is probably the first CX Tech demo day, a dedicated day to organizations who are supporting their clients to improve their capabilities through enhanced technology solutions. We invited 15 vendors from across the globe, some very familiar household names, some more boutique and specialist. We invited them to come and showcase their capability by demonstrating how to use their systems. It was a great day. We had some wonderful feedback from those who were presenting on the day, as well as those who were there to view what was going on, to help inspire and educate them and their organizations to understand what tech is available and capable in supporting their requirements. Alongside the demonstrations, we also had a couple of panel discussions, and this podcast is going to feature what we heard in those panel discussions. So we had Federico Sassoni from Sansiv, we had David Hennigan from CX Index, we had Keith Fulford from Genesis, Trent Rossini from Incuba, and Agam Kohli from Odigo. I posed to them some challenging questions, intentionally trying to get sort of the buyer's perspective on what they bring to the table, and really test them on sort of the standards that are expected these days, and to get a real feel for where they believe CX Tech is going in the future. I was blown away by their answers. Really interesting to hear what they say, and you could tell from each of them that they're clearly experts in their field. So I really hope you enjoy the discussion, and feel free to add any comments or questions on the back of this podcast, because invariably we'll be running more panel discussions, and I'd be really interested in hearing the questions you'd like answered. So without further ado, let's go over to the event now. Trent, from your perspective, how do you show? Because I guess, you're actually shining a light on something as opposed to it's a solution. It's a great organizing tool, isn't it, that leads to solutions. So how were you asked to kind of demonstrate the gains that you capture?
I think for anyone that attended the presentation, that's at the core of what we do. So the whole objective is actually to measure, in our terms, goal achievement or drop-off, and goal achievement is associated with revenue. So we put that at the core of our methodology and approach. We certainly have the view that it's all about the commercial outcome. Now, that's not to say that customer experience doesn't matter. It's to say that if you offer the right components of the customer experience, and obviously we all know that a great customer experience leads us to engage with brands more effectively, that ultimately we'll get a good result. The challenge, and I think some of the aspects that are somewhat missing in the space often, is that which components actually tangibly lead to an outcome and which one don't, is not clear. So I showed an example in the presentation, and it is from one of our actual clients, is product education turned out to be significant for one of our clients, more so than any other factor, more so, quite frankly, than CSAT. And intuitively, that's obvious. So from our point of view, we both monitor the outcomes, that's in our design, our approach, our reporting and our analytics. And then we orchestrate, not an aspect that are particularly covered in detail, we actually orchestrate on the customer journey, actually nudging people towards a goal point using many of the other technologies that we can interface to. So from our point of view, and quite frankly, I think it's just solely completely lacking in the CX space at the moment. There just isn't enough focus on outcomes and profitability, and that's why we see so much in the narrative of the fact that people are questioning whether CX programs have value or not. And I don't think that's because they don't. I think it's because the approach, methodologies, and tools aren't explicit about raising that, and they land up in very soft spaces. A term I like to use is POM-centric CX programs, where you're just not driving outcomes, and that ultimately leads to the fact that we won't get investment, both as vendors and more importantly as clients, to actually drive these outcomes.
Yeah, fair point, Trent. Fair point. Again, I'll come to you. Same question. I mean, how are you being asked to kind of show gains, or how do you capture and show gains?
So I think from our side, we look at it in terms of three pillars. And the three pillars we look at is kind of like, the human story around it. So how is the tech or the solution? How is it helping the agent or the customer? So, there's a story around that. Then we look at the operational story. So how does the solution then help, the KPIs Keith just discussed in terms of, your FCRs, your NPSs, etc. And there's a story around that. Now, the thing I do agree with Keith is obviously both of those combined together automatically bring in that commercial element and that commercial advantage. Because if you're doing the first two right, the third automatically sort of comes along with it, and that's where the focus is. So, in answer to the question, is it all just commercial? I think actually it's a balance between all three, because you need to get the first two right to be able to get the third as well.
Sure, perfect. And I guess there's many stakeholders who have invested interest there as well. Some of the operations people will be looking through the lens of operational KPIs, as you kind of said. How do you capture the kind of the gains you're making for them? What is the currency that they're kind of going, yeah, this is the value you bring, and is that currency just commercial, or is it broader than that?
Oh, it's definitely broader than that. It's because it's very hard to gauge the ROI of CX. Now, we've done a lot of work on it in terms of different projects and trying to calculate it, but then there's all things around culture, and when you add in things like employee retention and all these other factors that are, it's just extremely hard to calculate. However, if you can show value by looking at specific targets and specific elements, every use case is different and every customer is different, but you can definitely dive into it in some instances and show that, for example, certain things like one of our customers, for example, this is just one example. We have a close the loop functionality whereby if someone has a negative experience, they will trigger a case or closing the loop. And in that particular instance, the number of cases went down by 62% in 1 year. So what did that mean for the customer? They were able to, by using the data that we showed them, they were able to reduce the number of occurrences of those instances that were causing low feedback by 62%. So that's fine. What does that mean? That means that they're removing friction from the customer experience, they're reducing customer effort, the cost to serve customers going down significantly. The number of interactions also goes down as well, because these complaints, when they identify them through our platform, they don't recur. So if you actually look at the data that comes through from the customer, the insight on the likes of a case management tool, and use that data actually to make improvements, you can see very meaningful improvements. So when their number of cases went down by 62% and their cost to serve the customer went down very significantly, the actual net promoter score went up by 30%, and that was all within a 12-month period. So you can get really quantifiable, measurable improvements. That's just one example. So you just need to figure out what your outcomes are and start with the outcome at the outset. But I'll hand over to Federico and see if he's got some.
That's a great example. Just before we do, so if David, you're enabling that to happen. They obviously book the gains that they make because everyone's got to do their piece in it. But you're kind of the catalyst to that, I guess, aren't you?
Well, I wouldn't say. I would say we're just providing a very intuitive, easy to use piece of technology in the middle of the culture is the most important catalyst, I would say, and it's the company, right?
Yep.
So the company has the appetite to make a change.
Yeah.
We'll make it easy for them, right? So we'll make it easy for them to understand what needs to be done. And it doesn't work for every company, but if the company has the appetite from the top down, because there's also a cultural element and a strategic element in the organization as well. But if you get the perfect conditions where the company wants to read what the data is telling them, then the outcomes can be phenomenal. And that's and they're our ideal type of customer. We've got like these guys are a really high end retailer in North America, and their NPS is consistently over 80. So like their customer experience is really important to them. But like the actual it runs the full gamut though. So we've had some really disaster cases as well where their NPS is in the negatives, and we've seen them jump up into the positives. So it works across the full spectrum. It's just about what leadership is in place and what the appetite is around customer experience within an organization at a time.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually kind of the purpose of the team I run. Well, it is the purpose of the team I run, is to help customers understand the value. And so how do you capture them? Well, normally it's kind of 3 steps, or 2 steps for us at least. It's project that gain, because before you even go down that road, you need to project it, you need to build a business case, and then you evaluate that gain. And it all depends on what they're trying to achieve, and you align that with business goals and objectives as well. So how do you capture it? Baseline data they've got today, and using other customers, and we built a large number of calculators and everything else that's consuming other customers, feedback from other customers and their gains. And we overlay that on top of a customer's data to help them project or predict what the benefits would be, or whatever capability they're rolling in. And then after the event, I monitor stuff as it gets rolled out. And after the event, we go back and we observe what the benefits have been, and turn that into typically a pound sign or a euro sign or a dollar sign. And that's pretty much what we do on a day-to-day basis. Is it only commercial? No and yes. So invariably, some things to begin with are perceived as non-commercial and maybe slightly less tangible. But invariably, they lead to some sort of tangible benefit, a commercial benefit, whether that's ultimately a reduction in agent churn or increased sales, policy sales, whatever that may be. They ultimately do tie back to a commercial benefit, albeit you can't necessarily recognize or see that too clearly to begin with.
Brilliant, Keith. Thank you for that, and thank you for that honesty at the end. They're like the no yes rather than the yes no. It's a good so I get that. And I'm doing this on a rotational basis. So Trent, I'll come back to you now. So what's your perspective? Where is the biggest lift coming at the moment? Where you're seeing the huge impact that organizations are getting from CX technology?
I guess there are broadly 2 approaches that you can use to move customers along. The one is obviously offer a better experience, and there's value in that. As I said earlier, I think there's a lot of value in understanding where the issues are and then bringing about systemic fix. One of the aspects that I think is dramatically underplayed and underappreciated is the inertia that exists in customers. So for a customer, they're busy with their lives. They're fetching the kids, and they're attending the soccer matches, and they're going to the pub. They're doing all the things that they do in their lives. Interspersed within their lives are activities related to the services that many of the participants are offering today. So be it a telco, insurance company, a retail company, a travel company. So you've got to bring together the customer's life with the offering, and this sort of notion that the customer will engage and bring that particular service to conclusion. We just haven't seen that. So what happens is, you're often engaging on many fronts, and you're trying to keep your focus as a consumer in those fronts. So what you have to do in turn as a provider of services, you have to engage the customer. You have to understand their context, and you have to nudge them along. Obviously we've got tremendous developments and a lot of exciting work happening in the context of agents and lots of personalization. And that is certainly valuable. But again, I think one of the things that's really missing is getting timing right. Understanding how and when to engage, when it's appropriate, when there hasn't been action, and also understanding the degree and nature of engagement. So should I just send somebody additional little nudge, or maybe this person is completely confused, they don't understand the product offering, they need an in-depth conversation, they need a 2-hour conversation, they need some emotional hand-holding. So understanding the customer context and knowing how to engage along the customer journey ultimately changes their behavior and drives those outcomes, and allows the service providers that we work with to get a far better result. All centered on, again, to my previous comment, all centered on this notion that you are driving definitive outcomes that are good for the business. And the convergence point is where you are solving the job to be done for the consumer, and at the same time you're aligning that to the goal of the organization providing that service. And when you bring those 2 together, that's where you get very successful companies.
So I think there's obviously a lot out there, and I agree with what Trent says, right? That sometimes it is about product education, right? Because if you take AI as an example, and I'm not going to go down that road just now, but there's a lot of FUD in that space. A lot of people think a lot of different things in terms of what it does and what it can do. I think ultimately what we're looking to do from a CX point of view and an efficiency point of view, it leads to kind of one thing, which is time efficiency. So whether you're saving time in terms of handling interactions from an operational and agent perspective, or whether you're saving the customer time to kind of get to what they need in terms of that, first call resolution or first interaction resolution, ultimately they're all coming down to sort of what we see as time efficiency. And that in itself then leads to saving in terms of money and its own ROI. So that's the way we kind of tend to approach it.
And David, to you then, in terms of where does tech deliver the biggest lift in CX at the moment? What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I think I agree very much with Federico in terms of it's not necessarily, it's not about the tech, or to paraphrase Lance Armstrong, it's not about the bike. Obviously, the tech is important, right? But the culture is so critical. CX and VOC is one of those areas where you need to have a lot of things working together and to make a big difference in terms of making meaningful improvements. But one of the things I will say is that the likes of Federico and me and our companies are really well positioned to actually, we're in the middle of this AI boom and there's all sorts of great things happening. But I know anecdotally that some of the larger incumbents are struggling to get their hands around it because they're so large and it's such a big job of heavy lifting. Whereas the smaller players like Sansiv and CX Index have the capability to be a lot more agile and responsive in terms of meeting this new wave of AI. So we're doing some really cool stuff. And I've seen Sandstover doing some cool stuff as well. I just think there's a really good opportunity for smaller companies as opposed to sort of flex their muscles a bit, because we don't need as many people to do the work anymore, and we're not as inefficient in that sense, and there's a really good opportunity for companies in our space at the moment to grow. So I would say it's not just about the tech, it's about what are the circumstances around the tech. So it's the culture that's in the organization, but also what's the actual tech company? What are they like? Are they agile enough to be able to deliver it? And are you going to be able to respond to your customers? So there's a number of things that in terms of the environment in which the tech has been created that will determine whether it's a success or not. I think there's a lot of, we can all accept that there's a bit of commodification happening with a lot of this technology. So, it's about how you do it and the circumstances with how you leverage it. So a lot of the stuff that will be done with LLMs is literally just a skin on top of it. And there'll be fees. Ultimately, NVIDIA are going to make a lot of money from it. So it's just about who's able to package it well enough and deliver value from that.
We've heard there, Keith, kind of nudging behaviour and time efficiencies being two areas to get the biggest lift. What's your take on things?
Well, it depends. There's never a clear answer on this. It depends on the organization, the vertical they're in, what they're trying to achieve. But ultimately, if you look at what's driving customer experience, if you look at two ends of that model, or two ends of what that looks like, you've got, for an organization focused on CX, you've got loyalty that they want to grow from a CX, which is ultimately what they want to do, and why do they want to do that? That's about driving growth. And then the other side, operational efficiency. And if you look at balancing those well, the dominance of benefits are coming from, and I hate to use this, sorry, AI-driven capabilities. That is helping to actually drive that and change that, but at both ends. You're in a situation where now you don't have to sacrifice CX for operation efficiency. You can deliver both. So for me, I think that's probably the biggest differential or benefit now, is you can do both. Whereas historically, you kind of maybe had to sacrifice one for the other, one to drive the CX. That would have a potentially an operational cost or a cost on you. And that isn't the case anymore. And I think that's the biggest change. So organizations historically would be driven up. Efficiencies can now really drive their way forward on improving CX, which drives loyalty ultimately and more sales at the end of the day.
Thank you. I mean, really, really clear. Thank you ever so much. Where do you think technology, customer experience technology, is getting the biggest lift for clients now? Where are they employing it most kind of, effectively or even sort of most overtly? Where do you see the spend going and clients kind of saying, this is where we need CX tech to help us? I'll come to you first, Federico, on this one.
Well, that is an easy question, because if you address your technology with AI today, you are sure that you can get the budget. But in my opinion, is just a buzzword.
Yeah.
When basically I mean, I used to do machine learning at the end of the 90s, and we were considered just crazy guys that will know nowhere. Now to be in that field, you are really, kind of, you see the billions that they are around in Silicon Valley about people that works in this area. But to me, what is important is start always from the customer experience and then understand what kind of technology you have to use to support the customer experience. And this is exactly the same for the artificial intelligence projects that are around now. There are people that just start a project because it's sexy to start this project, and then they fail because they never consider the human aspect. They never consider what kind of problems they want to solve to the people. So in my opinion, of course, serving the customer, making make life easier for the customers is an important area, and companies are spending in that area. But for me, what is important is not just the technology that can solve a problem. At the end of the day, is a mix of technology, people, processes, and strategy you have in place, and you have really to work on that. So at the moment we are really in a crazy bubble where they just spend money really focusing on a technology, but I think it won't last for a long time.
Sure.
Because they need to prove at the end the return of investment, as we said before.
But from your perspective, it's enduring, Federico. You need to still stick with that North Star, which is what is the experience that you want your customers to have, and what are the problems you're trying to solve for them, and then work out where you place the impact.
Yeah, but Christopher, also, when we say what kind of experience we want to offer to our customers, I always say it doesn't depend from, someone say the customer experience strategy. In my opinion, it doesn't exist in customer experience strategy. There is the strategy of the company that then influence the customer experience. So I always say you cannot be Singapore Airlines and EasyJet at the same time. It doesn't work,
Sure, absolutely. Fair point. Trent, I'll come back to you next. So, 3 perspectives there. Are you strategic advisors? Are you sort of, de-risking their business, or are you there driving cost efficiencies? How do you present yourself, or how do clients perceive their relationship with you?
I don't think we fit into any of those categories, and maybe I'll just choose an alternative one. I think our engagements with our clients is really around in the context of helping them drive customer behavior. So this whole idea of saying, as an organization, you want to drive certain behavioral outcomes. Now, those behavioral outcomes might actually fit back into those 3 buckets that you spoke about, because you can drive behavioral outcomes that ultimately get people to use more efficient channels. You can get them to buy more. You can get them to stay longer. I think the key point probably that I do want to home in on that is super important is, as tech providers, no one's really interested in our features and functions of our technology. That's generally what we've seen. So where you need to home in is you need to actually understand the context of the customer, the corporate customer that is that I'm talking about. And based on that, you need to solution fit your features and functions to that particular need. And I think, I don't want to be too dramatic about the strategic importance that we play with our customers. What we do is we spend a lot of time understanding what the business outcomes are that they want to drive. And then we support that through, as I said earlier, through technologies, through methodology, through professional services to achieve that business outcome. And inherent in our methodology and our teams, we're very focused on making sure that we actually realize those business outcomes. So the objective of the project is not to go live, because quite frankly, there's no value in that. The objective is to operate a service that gives an outcome that's defined at the start of the project, and hopefully that outcome is related to a bottom line impact. Sometimes it does have cost efficiency. Sometimes it's got to do with the fact that customers' behavior that I spoke about leads them to stay with their organization longer. Hopefully, there are going to be occasions at which it's going to get them to buy more. In our context, our key focus is thinking about customer behavior and all of the elements that need to come together to drive that in customer behavior. And again, the organizations we deal with, I mean, they're experts in insurance, they're experts in banking, they're experts in retail. We're not. We have a good sense of those industries. But what we do is we're very engaged in terms of how to do customer journey management. And we've seen it across different industries. And I think, hopefully we add some value in that context, is bring that perspective, domain expertise to the table, and therefore assist some of our clients, or hopefully all of our clients, in achieving their goals and helping them. Ultimately, the question that I think any vendor should ask is, are you helping your clients achieve their bonus? And understanding that's super important.
Thank you, Trent. Very good, very good. Okay, so one more question. This one's been bubbling away, and what's really interesting, I think it was Engaged Customer. There's an event last week, and the conversations moved from how do you develop AI to the mess we're making implementing AI. And of course, it was fine until us humans got involved again, wasn't it? If we'd have stayed out of the way, we'd have been fine. But just so my question is, how are we framing AI in the role of CX tech? I mean, is it an enabler for something we're going to do anyway? Is it accelerating what we're trying to achieve? Is it the game changer? Is it a new paradigm we're working towards? Is it, as I heard someone describe, it's just like welcoming a new colleague with new skills? Or is it a better version than all of us put together? I mean, just how big, how important, how impactful, how do you frame it? So, Keith, I'll leave you to last, because then we can take that conversation into your presentation, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So I'll come to you first on it then.
So, Chris, I agree with everything you're going to say. I was going to say that, this is my own opinion, by the way. Actually, you've got to think of AI as a friend with superpowers on steroids. thinking of it as a point solution to solve one bit of something or another bit of something else isn't the right way to look at things. The way I think of it is it's an intelligence layer that kind of sits across every customer touch point. And it allows you to kind of sense and recognize patterns, and allows you, an organization to react and learn in real time, to then be able to obviously do what needs to be done to kind of, be predictive in terms of what needs to be done. Gone is the age of where, you have to wait for things to happen before you act. I think it's all about being able to do or take a decision in the now.
Brilliant, excellent. A really pragmatic approach there, and I guess that's born of you're working with this on a day-to-day basis, so you can see the fame and the fear that's kind of involved with it. So great, thanks ever so much there. How do you see your role with clients? Do you see yourself as strategic enablers of growth? Do you see yourselves as we've talking about it's a crazy Wild West time. There's a lot of uncertainty. Do you bring a bit of stability to that? Or at the end of the day, are we there, as transactors driving cost efficiencies, as that's always going to be a requirement by the organization? So how do CX Index try and position themselves with clients, David?
Yeah, I suppose, I suppose we're relatively small compared to the likes of, let's say, a Qualtrics or Medallia, who are the larger companies in the space. But what we do is we go end to end with our customers. So we take on a role of strategic consultant to an extent as well. And I know that's a lot of the work that you do, but it just so happens that we get really involved in what the customer wants in terms of their outcomes, in terms of how they're going to set up their VOC program. And we provide really, really strong advice. I think we kind of are really good at the advice piece when in terms of getting them off to the races. But then beyond that, they'll need hand-holding. And that's where I think, the likes of Lexington can come in and really deliver superlative levels of value. It's kind of, from our perspective, we really try to sort of deliver value in terms of, we buy into the whole story. So not just providing the technology, it's also about providing the consulting piece. It's not a core part of our offer, but it just so happens that a lot of the customers we come across have never done a VOC program before, and they need advice on how to get up and running. And we're very good at that piece, but I still see ourselves primarily as purely a technology company, and we don't make revenue out of the consulting piece. It's more just we want to make sure people get set up properly and don't make silly mistakes.
I was at an event last week, and the CEO of NFU Mutual was saying that what they look for from third parties is to understand the journey they are on. And exactly as you're saying there, David, get invested in what we're about and our purpose, because then you can really help my organization. And that's exactly what you're saying there is, that agility, that, call it boutique, whatever you how you describe it, affords you the opportunity to say, I can get invested with this client. I can understand their journey on. So I can appreciate what happens with that is you then get asked to utilize your skills and services beyond the core competency of the technology. There'll be other areas you become a trusted agent.
That there is that, and one thing, a good analogy I like to make is, um, if you were to look at the larger incumbents, you could say that they're like off the rack, like Nike or Adidas, whereas we're more like haute couture. It's more like, it's really like we get into the nitty gritty with the guys in terms of it's more, and but for the largely around the same cost and same price. It's like you get a really sort of tailored sort of feel and look, even as a cloud-based product, but we really go to the nth degree. I don't know what your experience of that is, Federico, but that's mine in terms of I try to differentiate not only with the technology, but with the counseling and advice we do as we get customers on board it.
And just a couple of times we mentioned there about you dealing with the robustness and the trust. A lot of this has still got to do with, the human interaction, you as teams dealing with the clients and the prospects. So, when you present yourself, how do you see yourself with your clients? Do you see yourself as a strategic enabler of their growth? We're talking about uncertain times. I mean, Agam earlier was talking about, geopolitical landscape impacting decision making. Do you see yourself providing stability in an uncertain era, or, as one of the things we said, as clients are still looking for, are you there to drive cost efficiencies? What is the role that you and your organisation have for your clients? Keith, I'll come to you first on this, if I may.
I keep using this word. It depends. It depends on the client and what their goals and objectives. And we are a global organization, so it depends where they are, of course, and their personal or their individual situation. And so when you're looking at an organization looking at growth, you are assisting or enabling that growth or helping to enable that growth. Equally, if you've got an organization that's really focused on actually operational efficiencies, you play that role in terms of how you actually help them do that. And where we are now is actually doing both where we possibly can. So it really depends on the customer, their location, of course, and where they are on the journey as a company, as an organization themselves. And from a perspective of an agent, in reality, you are a colleague. You are using the capability and tools to help them do their day-to-day job. All of those things. So and that's the question as to whether that's a better solution or not. Ultimately, it could be. It depends on the outcomes it's delivering. So back to one of Trent's points as well, it's heavily dependent on the outcomes you're delivering to. So not a clear answer, because I don't think it is a clear answer.
That's understandable. Thank you very much, Keith. How do you position yourself with clients?
No, the position of ourselves is more on let's say technology companies, but really focus on the analytics parts, because that was always let's say our unique selling proposition in the market. With the new product that really focus just on analytics, we are acquiring a customer of our big competitors, as David mentioned before, Qualtrics and Medallia, because we are really good in doing that piece of the whole journey. Before we had really and we still have the end-to-end platform, but competing with the big giants is difficult. So you really need to find your space, and we think we found our space in the analytics part. What we provide in terms of value is for sure a kind of strategic support, because at the end, the actionable insight that comes out give a strategic, indications. And on the other hand, we are really focusing on generating prediction over the single customers in terms that we can also provide and show the value of the solution and the return of investment.
Brilliant, brilliant. So Trent, we hear about, it's complex, but you've got to keep it simple for the customer. And as Keith said, it's kind of number one on the development list. So where does it fit in for you?
So the dynamics are quite interesting between people sharing information, trust, and the desire for personalization, but the desire for confidentiality. And often there's a sense that these things are pulling in opposite directions. So everybody wants a personalized experience. It kind of takes us back to the corner grocer store where the person understood you and understood your context. And in that world, you engaged with a particular individual and they knew a lot about you. In a similar way, I think consumers want personalized offers. They want personalized engagement. They want the organizations that they're dealing with to recognize them as individuals and their context and their problem and their background and their engagement. And we all get very frustrated when organizations don't do that. The counter to that, obviously, is that implies that there's a tremendous amount of personalized information. And that information needs to be protected, and there has to be a sense of trust. Just in the same way that you engaged with the corner grocer many years ago, and you trust that the grocer would keep that information confidential, you trust hopefully the brands that you're dealing with to do the same. So customers share that personalized context as a function of the trust in the brand. Now, for many of us, we're reliant on big tech. Microsoft, Amazon, Google. There's a lot of those security frameworks are developed by big tech. And I think, obviously as vendors in the space, we have to be adopting the right approaches. We need to be building it into our technologies, and they have to be super secure. We simply won't get business. None of us as vendors will get business without that level of security, and every one of us is subject to any number of cybersecurity reviews as we offer services, and obviously there's a check and balance to see that we comply with things like GDPR. So I don't think we've got much choice in the space. I do think that it is super important because it's not only a key requirement, a legislative requirement, and a entry into the game, but it's something that ultimately will make sure that your engagement with the customer is more effective, because if they trust you, if they trust the brand, they're more likely to share information. And I think there's a virtuous circle inherent in that, and you can't be on the wrong side of it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Trent. I think a great response to that one. It's so critical, and I think, you've all demonstrated that the seriousness and the responsibility is embedded into the fabric of your organization. So it's really rewarding to hear. We've got a question I'm going to finish with, so I'll come back to that specifically. But just jumping back, I was at an event last week where the directors of procurement were saying the only thing on the agenda is cyber risk. So I want to know this is not so much about your solution capability, but this is just an understanding in terms of where does this fit into the role of a CX vendor? How does this fit into how you present yourself, in the way that you conduct yourself, how maybe it is how your systems are orchestrated? So as I'm changing the order each time, I'm coming to you, Agam, first on this one.
Yeah, no problem at all. So I think, at least from an Odigo perspective, strategically, we've looked at cybersecurity not just as another part of CX, but more as a fundamental expression of how we look after our customers, so customer care. So what we try and do is, obviously, we know our clients, our customers, and their clients need to know that their data is safe, and security is kind of like a non-negotiable at the moment with Odigo. So our jobs as a vendor is to effectively integrate what we call security workflows within customer experience. Now, that can obviously take two forms. One is obviously, everything that everyone does from a CX perspective. There's obviously two-factor authentication, resetting passwords, etc. So one element of it from a CX perspective is to kind of simplify those processes to make it easier for end customers, to make it easier to kind of deal with the security that is now required for all that data protection and required to enable what you need from a cybersecurity perspective. And the other bit is obviously, still make sure that from a platform, from a back-end point of view, the security is robust. So, things are nailed down, tight and shut. And obviously that then depends in terms of what you then do for end customers, in terms of, whether you offer them sort of private data center solutions or in public clouds, stuff like that, right? So we try I wouldn't say have a fit for everyone, but at least from a security perspective, make sure that, all angles are covered. So it kind of fits as a fundamental pillar of what we now do as part of our customer engagement.
David, from your perspective, where does this fit into CX, the topic of cybersecurity?
Yeah, like it's just a hugely important part of our business now, and it always has been. We were very fortunate when we started the business. Our office was next door to a global leading authority on information security. So he drilled it into us from a very early phase that the importance of information security. And we're going back over a decade now, but you know, we obviously have the ISO certification going back since 2018, 2017, and we maintain that. But we just see it everywhere, like. And obviously, just like Francesca, it's like it's the part of the business that kind of like I'm not going to lie to you. I've no interest in it in terms of it's really it's like a tax on doing business, but you have to take it very seriously. You have to be really on alert about it. There's no such thing as best practice with information security because things are changing all the time. So we've got a full-time, a CISO in our organization who's like from a internal security company, and he works with us just to make sure our practices are maintained. And we wouldn't have the enterprise the same. We work with the enterprise as well, and you just don't get enterprise customers without enterprise security. So it's a cost of doing business, and it's one of those things that you have to maintain. And obviously, you don't want to have a situation where anything happens on your watch. So you just have to be vigilant because the damage that could be done, if you're not playing ball and doing stuff correctly, with API pen tests, app pen tests, all this type of stuff, if you don't have your stuff locked down, the risks out there are tremendous, and it could be, it could really damage your business. So we take it incredibly seriously, but it's a total pain, but you have to deal with it.
Yeah, I take that expression kind of, attacks on the business that, you've got to do, but it's the sort of thing, I guess, when you don't pay taxes and you get caught out. So it's a permission to trade, isn't it? It's in the essential bucket. It's not optional, and the levels of security and protection will invariably increase as does the complexity of digital. So, Keith, we've heard there from a customer-facing perspective how you can help customers navigate through what needs to be high levels of security, but also internally making sure the infrastructure is robust and tight. I mean, from your perspective, how does it fit into CX?
Gosh, it's pivotal to CX, really. I'm with again completely on that. Certainly, when we develop anything, it actually starts with security. It's our number one priority. Because the implications, and security is a bit of a weird one. Cybersecurity is a bit of a weird one. The value in it is only seen when it goes wrong and not when it goes right. And the implications of it going wrong are trust, brand reputational damage, regulatory compliance failures, resilience and continuity as well. It has an impact on all of the above. But I think the key point is, from a CX perspective, is to make it seamless to the end customer. It's a hidden thing. And so making it ultra secure, but then hiding the complexity and hiding all that horribleness, if you like, or the complexity behind that, and taking it away, keep it away from the customer.
Brilliant. Thank you, Keith. Now, one of the topics that's come up a couple of times today, and was again at this event last week, I was told it was the number one, was cybersecurity and risk, the potential threat to all companies. In the UK, we've been hit very hard, and kind of what's surfacing is it's quite often it's third party risk assessments that are identifying there was vulnerabilities. So how does this topic fit in with customer experience, and how much does it impact the way in which you operate, say, Federico? How does it affect you at Sansiv?
Well, that is an extremely important topic. It was always an important topic. So in our case, we start from the beginning to serve just the enterprise segment. And, we have to do all the ISO certification, the SOC 2 certification, etc. We need to provide to our client every 6 months, if I'm not wrong, a pen test to show, that we can assure that everything is in control. I would add one more, not really small element in the equation, because at the end of the day, the way generative AI is used today in the companies expose the company to big risks, because what is happening is happening that the individual take the solution by itself, and probably no one in the company knows that you are running ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you want, and no one understand the risks connected to that. There is a big reason why, the adoption in terms of individual is faster than the adoption in the company, and the reason is really this big risk. So this is the other aspect. We have worked a lot in terms of providing guardrails to the models that we use. Be sure that we follow a certain governance in the data and in the way. Other things are, for instance, European customers or Swiss customers that doesn't want the data, to leave the country or to leave Europe. So you need also to pay attention to that. Thanks God, there are a lot of, several options. We were laughing before with David, saying, okay, every morning you wake up and there is something news in artificial intelligence, but sometimes it's positive because, for instance, now you have all these very nice local models that you can deploy local, and you can avoid to have, those threats related to hacking and things like that. But definitely is a big topic, Christopher.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you. And really reassuring, kind of, the importance you say it's always been there. And Trent, from your perspective, obviously you're working with AI in a very specific way, but how are you kind of framing AI in CX?
The analogy I like to think about is really one of saying, what would you do if you had 1,000 graduates that had zero training but lots of intelligence? And I think that's kind of really what we've got here. So when you think about customer experience, and you think about a person going along the customer journey, in the past we often got feedback of saying, well, we've got all this feedback and it's kind of interesting. We understand where customers are at different points in the customer journey, but they need help. Now, having thousands of people in a contact center to reach out and help those people is quite difficult. Maybe not difficult, it's certainly expensive. With agentic and AI capabilities, what you're able to do is you're actually able to use agents to engage with people, taking the very specific context of the customer and offering them very specific advice at that point. So it's all about understanding where they are in the customer journey, and then using all of that context, which ultimately these very knowledgeable to be trained agents or the equivalent of a graduate is able to do. So ultimately what you can do is you can actually assign an agent per customer. So think of it as having a personal helper that's sitting in the background, helping you submit your claim into an organization, get your policy updated, help you with your banking. And the beautiful thing about the AI technologies is it can digest this vast amount of data and then personalize a response that's very specific to the individual at a speed and a cost, well, certainly a speed much higher than an individual can do, and a cost much lower than a human can do in the same situation. And we're appropriate, obviously, working in tandem with individuals, because there are certain instances, if you think about healthcare, for argument's sake, there's just, you can pretend to be empathetic through things like AI agents, but everyone will see through that. There's just nothing like the human voice to engage with someone when someone, for argument's sake, has the joy of having a new birth or has the desperation of discovering that they have a chronic condition that they have to deal with. So, there what you want to do is you want to actually avoid overuse, I think, of technology. But often there's an expectation when you're dealing with somebody in a traumatic situation that the person at least understands your context, and you can help inform people, the humans that are going to be engaging with people that need help. You can help inform them of the context so that ultimately they can be more empathetic and spend less time on administration.
That's a really good point you make there. I mean, will it be normalized at some point? I mean, we used to have a CEO who was the chief electrical officer because people didn't know what to do with electricity. You know, you needed someone to say, we can work late. Oh, we never thought about doing that before. So, you know, seems crazy to us now, but they were business decisions that had to be made. Okay, so one more question. This one's been bubbling away. And what's really interesting, I think it was Engaged Customer. There was an event last week, and the conversations moved from how do you develop AI to the mess we're making implementing AI. And of course, it was fine until us humans got involved again, wasn't it? If we'd have stayed out of the way, we'd have been fine. But just so my question is, how are we framing AI in the role of CX tech? I mean, is it an enabler for something we're going to do anyway? Is it accelerating what we're trying to achieve? Is it the game changer? Is it a new paradigm we're working towards? Is it, as I heard someone describe, it's just like welcoming a new colleague with new skills? Or is it a better version than all of us put together? I mean, just how big, how important, how impactful, how do you frame it? So, Keith, I'll leave you to last because then we can take that conversation into your presentation, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I'll come to you first on it then.
So, Chris, I agree with everything you're going to say. I was going to say that, you know, this is my own opinion, by the way. Actually, you've got to think of AI as a friend with superpowers on steroids. Thinking of it as a point solution to, you know, solve one bit of something or another bit of something else isn't the right way to look at things. The way I think of it is it's an intelligence layer that kind of sits across every customer touch point. And it allows you to kind of sense and recognize patterns and allows you, you know, an organization to react and learn in real time, to then be able to obviously do what needs to be done to kind of, you know, be predictive in terms of what needs to be done. Gone is the age of where, you know, you have to wait for things to happen before you act. I think it's all about being able to do or take a decision in the now.
Brilliant, excellent. A really pragmatic approach there, and I guess that's born of, you know, you're working with this on a day-to-day basis, so you can see the fame and the fear that's kind of involved with it. So great, thanks ever so much there. David, what's your take on this?
Yeah, so each of the points you made about AI there, I would say yes to them all. Like it's going to be a better enabler. All the different things you said, it's yes, absolutely across the board. But absolutely, as Federico said, I've got a great sort of theory about it. Not a great theory, but like a position on it. And it's just asking it a question: does AI know how you feel? And if I was to ask you that honestly, the answer is no. Like it's a binary question. AI can definitely make inferences around how you feel and, you know, make judgments based on the time of the call and the sentiment in your voice, but it doesn't. The only person who knows how you feel is you. And in order to extract that, you need to have a human element when you're capturing feedback for sure with our platform. It's always brilliant and it's disrespectful not to bring the customer into the conversation. So as companies go headlong into investing into AI and they're putting all this capital into AI, which is great and it's going to make life seamless and more easy for everyone, brilliant. And obviously there's going to be challenges along the way, but I expect AI is going to really be a massive game changer in many ways. But you should not, you know, invest in AI at the expense of customer experience. So you need to ask the customer, just as you measure agent performance, measure bot performance, you know, measure how the bot is doing, and really understand, you know, the impact that AI is having on customer experience. And I think it's a fascinating, you know, I heard some sort of analogy there recently, or not analogy, I heard some sort of statistic recently, sorry, whereby it said that in contact centers, for example, in that domain, 800 billion a year is spent. So including people, technology, and infrastructure, like locations, all that type of something like that. However, they reckon in a couple of years, that's like 5 or 6 years, going to go down to 600 billion. The money spent on people is going to shrink massively, but the money spent on technology is going to increase. So technology is something like 80 billion of the 80 billion of the 800 billion is being spent on tech. That's going to increase to 120, 140 billion. The number of money spent on people is going to decrease, but the overall amount of money that's going to be spent to service customers is going to go down significantly. So there's huge opportunities, but just be careful that to be responsible how you invest in AI, and then understand that the only person who understands how we feel really is ourselves, and that's never going to change.
Yeah, that's a really good perspective on it. Keith, before I come on to you, I'm going to set you a high bar here. We have had so far customer-centric from Trent. We've had FUD from Agam. I mean, we've really, the vocab's been amazing here today. So I'm expecting you to leave me with something of equal quality, if that's okay. When I ask you, how do you frame AI in CX?
Well, whether it's equal quality, I don't know. But as I see it, it's evolutionary revolution.
Oh, I'm glad that one to do.
And the reason I see it that way is because today, and we create the framework to help customers understand where they are. It's levels of experience orchestration, but also to understand where the industry is. There's 5 levels in that. Customers mark themselves in terms of where they are and their maturity on that, all the way up to level 5, which the industry is not at yet. In 5 to 10 years' time, it will. So to Trent's point about mentioning, you want to speak to a human and you want to feel empathy in 5 to 10 years' time, it'll be probably the case that actually you won't even know the difference if AI is following the trajectory it's been following. But today, we're kind of setting it up as an evolution in the sense of how you're evolving those services over time, and you're using maybe more augmentation than anything else rather than complete replacement, using it to gather information quickly and data as a supplementary capability. It's assisting in many cases. And the level of what you can automate is increasing all the time. But if you look longer term, the industry is, we refer to it as kind of at level 4 now, but level 5 is where 95% of your interactions could be handled by a virtual agent of sorts. But that's how we kind of see it and how it's evolving. So back to your question, is it a game changer? It's evolving into one very, very quickly. And if it already isn't one now, and in 5 to 10 years' time, we'll look back and go, yeah, if we look back 5 to 10 years ago, this is completely different. So
yeah. Right, so I've got one last question, and kind of it's been bubbling away as a topic all throughout the course of today, so you won't be surprised to hear how we're going to frame AI in CX tech. So I've got a number of different descriptions I've collected just from certain LinkedIn posts, people describing AI in CX tech in a different way. So just get your take on which of these feels the most appropriate description, and then just a final point on how's it going to change the way we work. So is it an enabler for what we do? Is it an accelerant? Is it just speeding up what we were going to do anyway? Is it genuinely a game changer and the future will look very different? Do we treat it as just like a new colleague joining the team who brings complementary skills to what we have? Or is it a better solution than all of us kind of put together? So let's come back to you, Federico, on this one. How do we frame AI in CX tech?
Well, an easy question to close the day, Christopher. Well, first of all, I mean, there are 2 aspects. Using artificial intelligence to serve customers in terms, clients, and this is a very important aspect. Second is using artificial intelligence in our customer experience management process. So in the customer experience management process of my clients. And, at the end of the day, we need to be careful to not overestimate what artificial intelligence can do, in our fields, because of course we have large language models, but they are full of hallucinations. They need to be set up in a certain way. For instance, now there is, a big hype in the agentic and in the agents area. But slowly they discover that also the agents can become stupid. So it's really, something where we have to pay attention. My point of view is a very important tool, is something that will change for sure what we are doing and what we will do in the future. But the human component is extremely important. It's always extremely important. And we need, unless, we apply artificial intelligence to extremely repetitive tasks that don't require, a lot of attention and things like that, they always need to be supervised by humans and that control the quality. So in my opinion, there was a false hope at the beginning that said, okay, now is artificial intelligence doing everything, agents will do everything by themselves, and they work independently. I think that if you see the figures now out of the proof of concept that have been done and basically the projects that have been done. For instance, I can bring you an example. An artificial intelligence agents at McDonald's is public. This information, basically order 285 chicken McNuggets for one person because he did he did an error. So these explain everything. So the human component and the human supervision is extremely important. Of course, the tool is an enabler. It helps us. Is a kind of junior, let's say, junior member of the team, but please don't copy and paste because you need to read what is
I think
produced.
my eldest son would look at that as a loyalty bonus from McDonald's. I think he'd manage his way through it and then come back down the gym. He'd like that, I think. Federico, that's awesome. Thanks ever so much. And I know that this is a world in which you've inhabited for many years. So there's a wise head there sharing us an appreciation of it. Well, look, guys, I appreciate the time you've given here, and we squeezed as much out of you as we possibly can. So really well done on taking those questions and got kind of really honest and sincere answers. And I think kind of at the end of the day, when you're leading CX tech companies, that's what people still buy into, is that integrity. And you two have demonstrated that in the way that you've shared your information. So I thank you very much. I thank you for both being a part of our inaugural CX Tech Demo Day. We're hoping this is the first of many. And we hope that we've shared a new audience for you, and they can kind of hear about what you're doing, because there are so many brilliant CX tech providers in this space, and sometimes there's it can be a bit crowded by one or two who kind of take all the limelight. So it's great to be able to provide an opportunity to more. So David, Federico, thank you both very much, and enjoy your evenings. And we'll speak again soon, no doubt.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. And lovely. Please feel free to connect. And
please do, yeah. Find David and Federico on LinkedIn, as well as through their company website, CX Index and Sansiv. So do get in contact with them. And if you want to hear what they said earlier on their demonstrations, then the QR code will be flashed up again. You need to register, and you'll get access to the demonstrations they provided earlier as well.